All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Brock, you weren't kidding about that vibe music on the countdown. That's totally good. Well, hey, listen, if you've come online to join us today, we're super glad that you did. If you're joining us after the fact, if this is hitting you in the future, really glad that you're here as well watching this. We are so excited to launch for ERP powered by Wyatt today. And to get started, we're just going to go around the horn with introductions. So I'm going to use the grid that I see. So, Mark, do you mind kicking us off?
Yeah, so Mark Bertsch, I'm the CFO at AE Works, predominantly Pittsburgh-based and DC architectural and engineering firm of currently around 100 employees. So I've spent probably the last 6-7 years in the AE space working through building AE firms.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually used one of AE Works' projects in one of our internal kickoff meetings, just like the stuff you guys are doing out there is so awesome. Yeah, that's great. All right, Matt, we'll kick to you.
Thanks, Luke. Matt Pantana. I am one of the founders of Wyatt and formerly co-founder of Clearview, which became Unanet AE.
Awesome. And you look like you're in a much more comfortable spot than I am.
I'm on a couch.
There you go. All right, Brock, you're up, buddy.
Hey, I'm Brock. I am also one of the co-founders at Wyatt, longtime Unanet employee. Started with Clearview and Focus back in 2015. Worked with Lucas and Matt and Mark now for many years, but now with Wyatt. So
awesome. And my name is Lucas Hayden. For those of you I haven't met, it's good to meet you. I've been in the A&E space for about 15 years. And it's funny, we were talking earlier, guys, like we've got like a decade of shared history together. So I started back with Matt in Clearview and now obviously a part of Unanet AE. But back in the day, Brock and I used to go out to Cleveland and work with Mark at his firm and do a lot of things that is really kind of thematically around what we're talking about today. And those trips were always fun. What was the name of that, Brock? What was that barbecue place? Oh, yeah.
Mabel's Barbecue.
Oh, my goodness. Yep. Shout out there.
Michael Simon, best barbecue in the country.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to try to share my screen here and get us kicked off. Let's see. Window. Okay, here we go. You guys see my, okay, there we go. Awesome, very cool. So yeah, thinking back to the Cleveland days, what were we doing there? Oftentimes what would happen is Mark would reach out and say, hey, I'm trying to do this thing, whether it be we're trying to automate this process or we're trying to see our data sliced in a certain way or build these analytics so we can either monitor firm performance, project performance, things like that. And Brock and I would go out, and credit where it's due, Brock would sit with Mark for like 2 or 3 days and build all of the solutions to support kind of the use case for what they were doing. And as we think about ERPs, powerful system of record, and where we sometimes see people struggle with them is in getting kind of the full value out of the data, because historically it would take someone with technical acumen like Brock to really kind of build out what you wanted to do. And so oftentimes firms will rely on like 1 or 2 people in their business to pull reports and get the data they need to make decisions. And particularly for folks that are like project managers that are typically busy or more field or client facing, as opposed to going through the process of waiting on information. They just work in spreadsheets, and obviously there's breakdown there. People are using different sources of the truth, and that just makes it really hard for the business to operate. And then you just kind of end up in this vicious cycle of a lot of manual work and things like that. And what we're excited to announce today is a new agentic experience for ERP, one where you can leverage both your structured ERP data, but also your unstructured data to get one kind of single view of your firm performance, of your project performance. But what that does is it allows kind of everybody in the firm to benefit from that source of truth and essentially turn everyday users into power users. Matt, if I can borrow your term there.
May.
So yeah, really exciting. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I'm sorry. I must be lagging. I said you may borrow.
Oh. Yeah, no, for sure. So that all being said, what I wanted to do is spend a little bit of time, Matt, we can start with you, kind of talking about the impetus for Wyatt. And, you know, when we think about the kind of perennial challenges with ERP or business systems at large, what about AI kind of just changes the fundamental approach there from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. You know, to your point about you and Brock traveling to Mark and business a decade ago, you know, we spent a lot of time in the early days building out features that were probably ahead of their time back in 2015. Yeah. Still, in some cases, are ahead of their time. But to your point, required a certain threshold of technical acumen to fully extract. And while I wouldn't say we had to come on site to do it, there were certainly firms that were able and still are able to do that. We were building very powerful tools that definitely had a threshold. You know, I've talked to you before, Luke, and I've used this example. Cars haven't fundamentally changed in 100 years, right? We've had better motors and better ways to shift gears and GPSs, but fundamentally, we sit in the driver's seat, we grab the wheel, and we drive. And now we're seeing this shift towards AI in cars too, where the actual experience of what it means to drive or to be driven is fundamentally changing. So AI offers that obviously in driving, but it offers it in software too. So I think the big change is we're going to start seeing the way that we work with ERP morph into more conversational, more on the fly, more dynamic UI. And that's not to say ERP goes away, because again, in that analogy, I think ERP is the car, it's not the steering wheel, right? So you still need the vehicle where all the data is and where the engine is, but how you work with it is fundamentally changing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we were talking about this yesterday with PSMJ. I did some research last year on like reporting behaviors for people, particularly in the kind of the AI age that we're in now. And I think what we're going to see as we move forward is people are just kind of less patient about, you know, the time it takes to get at information. You know, you even think about it outside of the ERP conversation, you know, most people or many people are, you know, moving away from like Googling for results of websites to go and then read. And they're using either Gemini or ChatGPT or the likes to be that source of information and insight, even in everyday life.
Yeah, Luke, that's a really great analogy. There's a lot of numbers around like website traffic across publishers being way down because people, they search Google and they get that like automated or the AI summary at the top, and they found the answer they needed rather than having to go hunt through websites. And so that presents a real problem for like publishers, and their ad revenue is down, which is rough because the industry is changing. But that's a really nice analogy actually for like how we're working with the ERP. Like you ask your question, and if it can just get you the answers rather than giving you a menu of like, here's all the different places that you could go and dive deeper and like go find the answer for yourself. So like that experience that I think all of us have when we're Googling now is like what we're trying to bring to the ERP. Like just come with your question and then we'll surface it from, and you can still go into the ERP, of course, like Matt said, it's not going away, but just surfacing those answers quicker is what we're after.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's like it's a different kind of question, right? If you're working with your accounts receivable or something like that, like you're still going to want to pull your AR aging report or, what have you. But the questions behind why you're pulling that report, what's our risk? Like what clients are trending, over the last 5 years to be 45 days plus or whatever. It's the question behind the data that you're after, which is, you're exactly right, Brock. That's a good analogy.
Yeah. And Lucas, I would say like, for me, it's all about the ability to interpret the information. Like we've always been pretty data rich, right? And pulling that data sometimes was cumbersome, but once you got to a point to pull it, I think that the step that AI has kind of enabled is, all right, am I really seeing what I think I'm seeing? And AI, it definitely is able to say, hey, yeah, this is how I interpret it. This is how I interpret you against the industry. And, that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, it really is. Mark, I wanted to ask you, there's a kind of catchphrase Matt and Brock and I have been kind of using, the ERP expert you always wanted. When, from your seat as a CFO growing A&E businesses, what does it mean to have an ERP expert, just fundamentally from your point of view?
Fundamentally, I think it's speed. Speed to get to this data that I can make a decision on. Historically, we talked about, the time we spent together in Cleveland, which was great. I would create these dashboards, but then there would be some business case that just kind of broke the dashboard, and I'd have to go back and maybe add something to the query or change the dashboard a little bit. The Wyatt AI tool is so flexible that if I get something built, and Brock will probably demo that soon, I could quickly, within a couple of minutes, change that ask and include things that may have been sparked as a result of what I just created.
Yeah. The classic example to me is like, oh yeah, but what about fill in the blank? And what about this? And as I've started to use the tool, like that's kind of where my mind goes. And it's amazing like how quickly you can go from like basic informational question, kind of like, your classic dashboard kind of information, to like, well, what about this? And then could we look at this, aspect of this thing? And like, before you know it, you're like, what would otherwise have been, I don't know, 100 hours of analysis, and you're down that path in like 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. And Matt, from your perspective, like when you staying on this like ERP expert you always wanted, like I know that we've kind of used that term, like, imagine having somebody sitting right next to you that you can just turn to and ask, hey, what do you think about this? Could you get me this information? Oh, could you run off and do these things? What about that phrase makes you lean in?
Yeah. So a year ago, the definition of the ERP expert you always wanted is different than it is today. So a year ago, it was, hey, make me a dashboard so I can go interpret the data. And we blew past that marker, right? So now we're at, just tell me what I need to know. Skip the dashboard, or do it because I want to see it, but also then tell me what it is. So it doesn't have to be a single answer. Obviously, it's a spectrum of what it can do, but certainly aiding you in creating and crossing that threshold of technical acumen is job one, so go get this data that I need to make a decision. Step two, now go tell me confirm what I should think about the data is probably step three. And then the delegation of that, where, hey, every day at this time, go do this. And if condition X is met, email me. And if not, email Mark. That's the automated layer. But to me, we're moving so fast past what the ERP expert met a year ago that, and it's not just what we're doing. I think globally we're starting to realize, what can be done when we start putting the right tools in front of our agents to do this stuff. And so we're just learning to think about the delegation of that work so that we can move on to the next level.
Yeah, 100%. Mark, do you mind kind of just giving a couple of examples? Like, I know, I can share a couple too here as well, but like, I've had like a few like kind of unlock aha moments, like, oh, wow, like I can do this. Can you share a couple of examples that might come to mind just to sort of like ground us in like what the actual use cases have been helpful for you?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, I think, the issues that I saw were visibility problems, right? Where if I were to use the analogy that Matt about driving the car, like I always felt like I was driving, looking in the rearview mirror. I would get data on a project, and by the time I saw it was typically, potentially off the rails as far as profitability goes on a project.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, as Matt said, it was pretty simplified kind of communication with the tool. I would ask it to bring back some data, and I go, "Oh, that's nice." It brought back the data, and by the way, it's correct. I'd go tie it out. But quickly, I'd say, a matter of months, it was now I can interact with that. And I think, one of the biggest aha moments was kind of decision speed, where I would ask about a project and, it would bring back, interpret what I thought I was seeing in the project, and then go to the next step, like, hey, give me a 90-day plan to turn around this project.
Yeah.
And the tool was smart enough to provide that.
Yeah.
One of the things that's been such a pleasure of working with Mark and our other beta users has been like, we get aha moments by watching them use it, because sometimes our creativity limits us. And Mark, one of the things that you got out of it, I remember you sending us feedback and saying there was a certain project. I'm paraphrasing here, but there was a certain project and you felt like there were a lot of people on it, working on it, and you weren't, one, sure how many, and two, why. And so you asked Wyatt, like, how many people are working on this project, and why are so many working on it? Like, what are they doing? And Wyatt was able to like look through the timesheets, look at the timesheet comments and what parts of the project they were working on. And then you also gave the same question to the project manager. And remember you saying that like what Wyatt said and what your project manager said was pretty similar. And was able to like glean all that by like reading through, first of all, getting that data, but then like reasoning over it and saying like, oh, this is what's going on.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think one of the biggest ahas for me was probably two things. Like when I think about project management, the two things that are always on my mind, putting myself in those shoes, is how's my project performing and what is actually happening? Like what's the work being done? And when I saw like the ability to take like the timesheet comments, like, those are the truest, pieces of information, at least from like a client facing perspective on what's being done on the project. When it can take those and kind of like build a narrative around like what's actually happening and who are your top contributors on the project and, those kinds of things, and then marry that with the financial performance as a PM, to me, that's just like liquid gold, to be able to see that in that way. And then have, like you mentioned, Brock, like, hey, these are, or maybe Mark, you said this, like, here's your 90-day plan suggestions for dealing with these things to correct the ship. What I love about that is not only do you get like that whole kind of like the value of the AI and the speed and of course the accuracy, but it also like kind of satisfies that human in the loop thing where it's like, oh, well, these are suggestions for moving forward. And then me as the PM, I can measure that up against my gut and, have a really well-informed plan, which I think is really powerful. Tell you what, why don't we jump into the software and show a few things, Brock, and kind of like bring what we've been talking about to life.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let me pull that up. All right, let me know if you guys can see Wyatt.
Yep.
Great. All right, so I'm gonna not walk us through exhaustively, but just kind of give us a high-level overview tour of the screen, or I mean of the app. And just a heads up, I'm working with one monitor, so if questions come up, obviously, guys, feel free to interrupt me, and we'll pivot and bounce around. But this is the home screen of Wyatt. Let me just tell you sort of what we're gonna walk through. We have a few main features. We've got chat, roundups, and chores, as well as some fun integrations and automation tools. Chat, obviously, that's where we'll start. That's like the front door into Wyatt. If you've used any sort of AI chat experience before, it'd be a very familiar experience. So I'll go ahead and come in here and just say something to Wyatt. I've got these pre-written, so I don't have to have you guys watch me type. But I can come in and talk to Wyatt, and it's pretty quick, and it'll tell us, here's who built me. This is my tagline. This is what I do. And I can go back and forth and have a conversation. Just a note, it's built for your ERP, but it is a frontier model, best in class. And you're not limited to only asking questions about your ERP. So one of our goals with this is that it would be like the enterprise answer for your company when it comes to having a chat agent for people to use. So it can be your thought partner. It can help you understand, difficult accounting terms that you don't quite have a good grasp on. It can do research for you and search the web and I've had it look for civil engineering opportunities in my geographic location, and it goes out and does that and brings it back, and I can do that on a schedule. And so it can do all the things, but the big differentiator is that it is an AI agent with a native understanding of your ERP and the AEC industry and deep hooks into your ERP system. So I can ask it, tell me more about yourself, but let's get into some actual helpful tools or helpful data. And so here I'll ask Wyatt about utilization, like utilization, realization, billable mix. Let's look at that. Show me utilization for 2019 and 2020, break it into a graph, and so on. While it's running through this, I just want to point at these messages that we see here. This is important for a few reasons. Wyatt started the task, but now it's handed off, we can see, to the timekeeper. So we have this architecture built that is, it's an agent, sub-agent architecture, but we like to describe it as like a sheriff and his deputies. So Wyatt is the sheriff and he has many deputies. There's the timekeeper and the treasurer and the accountant. And each one of those is responsible for a different part of the ERP and has knowledge into that part of the ERP. Why that matters to you is because that's tied into our role-based access controls. So if certain people in your firm should be able to, for instance, put timesheets in using Wyatt, but shouldn't be able to ask about your general ledger, you can just disable them from having access to that sub-agent, and then that's shut off from them. So it's very secure, and we have lots of rights, and we're constantly evolving that and allowing you to protect, different parts of the system. So here you can see Wyatt was able to go get that data and stack it and bring it back. It actually got the utilization part wrong, which is surprising, but happens. And it was a really nice interactive chart. So we can filter and say, maybe I only want to see the billable hours. I can export this and put it in an email or presentation or what have you. This in itself is very cool, very useful, that Wyatt can we describe it as playing fetch. It can just go get data for us and bring it back. I could dig into this deeper and say wow, July was actually way lower than I expected. Let's see all of the hours and all the timesheet entries and just go back and forth and slice it and dice it however I want. However, one of the limiting things that we've seen is that, I want to show that yet. Oftentimes we're limited by our own creativity when it comes to asking questions. And we've seen that when we do demos to certain prospects, they'll say you guys obviously will get value because you know the ERP, but I don't have that good a knowledge of all the things available. How do I get value out of it? For one, you can bring your own language, and Wyatt will help understand what you're asking. But two, we have this really cool feature called the prospector that is currently a beta feature that we're working through. But it lets you pick a persona and then sort of have an outcome. It'll give you some seed questions, or you can bring your own question. But it's really I'm after this outcome and I'm trying to get an answer, do the work for me. So here I had started this one just yesterday, and I asked it, for these 2 fiscal years, let's look at our P&L info and EBITDA and overhead and things like that. And I kicked it off and I said, only do 5 turns. And what it did was Wyatt asked the first question, and then Wyatt went and it's very meta, but Wyatt asked the question and Wyatt got the answer. And then Wyatt understood that answer and all the data in it. And then it asked the next question, and then it went, and it just kept going. So this was a pretty quick turn. It was only, I think 3 turns total. I've seen it go for 10 or 15 turns if I crank that limit up and have it going after something really complex. This is nice because
I'll add some color to that, Brock. So this feature I think is awesome. Actually started as a QA tool for us to test the software. We just needed to make sure the screen, every time we do a build, we just make sure we didn't break something and break the screen. Mm-hmm. So it evolved from just we need to be able to simulate a question to, hey, that's a good question. Yeah. That's an interest. We should make it be able to see the answer. And then it saw the answer and what's a follow-up question? And it became very useful for, I think the opening scenario I came up with was, you're a CFO, it's your first day, you don't have access to the ERP yet. but you have a meeting in an hour with the CEO, go. And so it just started like winding its way through the system and built this fairly comprehensive view of the business. So I see it as a couple things. One, it's great when you run up, if you're just starting and you don't really know how to lead a question, but it's also kind of a go to lunch thing. Like, hey, this invoice is off by X, figure it out. And you just start it, and it just kind of winds the path, and you come back 15, 20 minutes, an hour later and see what it came back with. And again, it can see the responses. It can see the charts. If you ask for a stacked bar chart and you get a not stacked bar chart, it'll say, hey, I asked for a stacked bar chart, and it'll fix it and keep going. Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one of the artifacts, as it's doing this, we call them nuggets. It collects certain nuggets of facts throughout the process. And then it can compile, if you ask it to, compile all this into a nicely formatted executive report that you can download as a PDF, which is just, yeah, you said it well, Matt. It's very cool that it's kind of like a go to lunch. When we were all together last week or the week before on site, I had kicked it off on over a set of data, and I said, go look at the PSMJ Circle of Excellence metrics, in which it went out and found. And then I asked it, benchmark this firm against those metrics. And it was like 15 or 20 minutes while we were like working and doing other things. And it was done. I had it nicely formatted like tables and graphs and explained to me how it got to its numbers. So chats are great, but what we're building up to, by the way, is that I want you to think of Wyatt as less of just a tool that you use and more of a teammate that you have hired onto your team that works alongside you and even does work for you sometimes. Chats are awesome, but they are only interact. Like you can only get data from them when you're sitting at the computer and asking. And we know that, first of all, that you work on a rhythm, right? So you need certain data at certain parts of the month, and having it like static in a chat is not ideal, right? You don't want to have to come back every Monday or the first of every month or as you're closing your books and have the same conversation over and over again. So the next feature that I'm going to show, roundups, is how we kind of like memorialize and codify some of these insights into a dashboard experience. However, like everything we do, we don't want to just create like a slightly easier way to build dashboards. We want to like add an agent into the mix. So what I did is I converted this chat to a roundup yesterday. I had it look at all the insights and data that it pulled and go build a dashboard for me with no input from me on layout or anything like that. And that's what popped earlier in here. Wyatt went and wrote all the SQL, pulled it out, decided the best way to lay that out, put it in a dashboard for me, and then sort of reasoned over that data and gave me like, here's some headlines and some things to look at and next steps. I'll go into full screen mode here for a minute. So oftentimes in AI, we hear the term human in the loop, which is, you want to have a human be able to make decisions when humans need to. We like to describe roundups as like kind of the inverse of that. This is like an agent in the loop for your dashboard. So it's amazing that it goes and writes the SQL and pulls the data and lays it out, but it also sits in the middle, like we've said a few times, where it can like reason over your data for you. And that's what this block is down here, which is really cool. These dashboards are literally just spoken into existence. So if there's a KPI on here that you don't like, or maybe you want to add some forecasting to this chart or do it for a different date range, you can just open up the prompt that Wyatt wrote for itself and go in and edit it and say, maybe I don't want to do it for this fiscal year, I want to do it for another. Or I want to add some forecasting to this. So forecast that out over the next 12, 18, 24 months. I did an example this morning. It was on our internal company data, so we're not going to pull it up. But where I was looking at something and I said, cool, can you forecast that out over the next 8 months and do it using 3 different models, like a conservative, a moderate, and then like very aggressive growth, and explain to me why you picked those. And it was like, okay, well, I did, this % month over month growth. I used this because it was the geographic mean of these 2 things. And it just forecasted my data out for me, which is like, Luke and I were looking at it earlier, and it's like, that's amazing. And if I decided like, 15% is not realistic, let's go 8, it would do it. It just do it. So I don't have to figure out how to like write the code, pull that together. So this is one way to get to a roundup. The other way, and this was actually inspired by a conversation that we had with Mark back in, it was late July. I remember because I was in a coffee shop in upstate Michigan, and we were talking and just kind of like bouncing ideas around. We had a different feature that was called Spaces at the time, and it was a dashboard feature that would have basically evolved into this. But we were saying, one of the things I used to do with Mark is we would sit in a boardroom and like literally draw on a whiteboard, a dashboard. And then I would go write all the SQL and then use Analytic Dashboard Designer, which is a great tool, best in class, I think, when it comes to ERP in app. But I would go build it all, and we would review it and stuff. And Mark had made the comment like, man, it'd be cool if you could just like draw it on a napkin and then upload it. So Matt did it. We all got an email on Christmas morning that said, hey, Merry Christmas, you can do that now. So if I wanted to make an AR dashboard that looked at kind of the health of my company, just accounts receivable. So this is a very like not granular ask, just I want to see the health of our receivables at a glance, some metrics. I don't give it anything like terribly helpful. But I did draw a picture. Ryan Cruz and I, who's on the team, drew this when we were in DC earlier this year. And you can see I want some KPIs. I want AR balance, open invoice count, balance over 60 days, average invoice amount, a bar chart and pie chart showing aging, and then a table with detailed information. I can just drop that in here now and kick it off, and Wyatt will go build it for me. I've already done that with that image, so I'll pull that up. And Wyatt got it exactly right. So all the KPIs I asked for available across the top. We have, the bar chart and pie chart that I asked for, a detailed list of AR balance by client and invoice number, and broken out into aging buckets, which I could, take a full screen view of, or I can take it out download it and take it into Excel. I can actually download this to a CSV, go to a chat and upload it, and then have Wyatt like start working over it. So we can bring our data to Wyatt as well. And then of course it reads into over that data. If there was anything in here I didn't like, whether it came to layout, we can drag and drop and move things around or take certain things off of it if we're not interested. And Wyatt will remember that you did that the next time that you rebuild the dashboard. So that's
one thing.
roundups.
One thing I'd add there too. So one of the other impetuses for roundups was when you go to a chat and you have a conversation and you're asking about your data. This is the very first time you do it. It's amazing and it feels very novel and awesome. But 100 days in, you don't want to have to go start. Okay, let me start my question again today and go through this whole long process every time to get the same data. So one of the cool parts about, well, really the components that come through the chat, but also this roundup is once it builds it, it's refreshable like any other dashboard. So that very first button there, that's the refresh button, that just refreshes the data. So if the numbers change minute over minute or day over day, you'll see them reflected when you hit refresh. Also, Luke, tell me if now is a good time, but I see a couple questions come in while we're talking about the data. I'm happy to take a quick fly over that.
Yeah, why don't we take a quick aside and do that? We've had several kind of data related questions. So yeah, Matt, if you want to just sort of
one of the ones I saw was how do we process the data? So Wyatt itself, other than data you create from inside the app, reads the data virtuality product of Unanet. So we're a layer on top of your ERP, and we're not storing any of your actual ERP data. We're just querying it as you would with any other an analytics tool. Security wise, I saw a couple questions come in. Do we map to the ERP permissions? We have a role-based access control permission setup that is not one-to-one, but you can effectively accomplish the same things. The reason it's not one-to-one is because there's more than one product in the Unanet suite of products. So we have to have a platform that maps to all of that. But effectively, you can get there. So we know the permissions, what you can do in Unanet AE well enough to make sure that we covered all the bases so that it's configurable so you can get there. We have role-based, row-level access, field-level access. Can you see pay rates? Can you see job cost? All that's in there.
Yep.
And if you saw other questions, Luke, feel free to throw them at us.
Yeah, I'll do that. I think that's a good aside for right now, though.
Cool. And we'll keep going. Sort of the last part of the app that I want to talk about is more on the automation side of things. We have chats where you come to Wyatt with your questions, and then we have roundups, and you can create those either just starting from nothing or starting from a chat. So you've pulled some data and you want to be able to come back and see that and refresh those things. Lastly, we have Chores, and Chores is really where Wyatt, I feel like, makes a category change. Like I said at the beginning, like away from just a tool that you interact with and something that actually does work alongside you and even for you. So we Matt and I both drive Teslas and really enjoy the self-driving, and use that analogy a lot, that this is kind of like self-driving version 2 self-driving. So, it lets you, we say all the time, it lets you kind of like take your eyes off the road or hands off the wheel. It's not quite ready for you to like get in the back seat and take a nap and let Wyatt just run your business. But Chores let you have Wyatt do work for you. So I have a chat here that I had yesterday where I asked Wyatt, what's my AR balance? And if you were paying attention in the previous screen with the roundup, these are the exact same numbers. And so we try and pride ourselves on not making numbers up, which even though it is a probabilistic engine underneath, we have a very deterministic way of getting this data. So I've asked about AR balance, and it gave me that data broken out by client. I dug in a bit deeper and asked about a certain client. But here you can see I've asked Wyatt, like, hey, let's keep an eye on that client. That balance is higher than I expected. If it slides any further into the next bucket, just let me know. And like, let's just look at it once a week. And it asked me for some clarification, which I gave it, and it does that frequently. And then before it wrote and made the actual chore, it said, like, just so we're clear, this is what I'm going to do. Does that sound good? I said, make it. And it spun up a chore for itself. So here you can see the list of chores. Here's the one that I had asked for on the Casco Bay Sailing Company. And this will run, again, I did it yesterday, so it's never run yet. But this will run every week, Monday morning, 8 o'clock. It's going to go look at that company and look at their AR balance. And if the change has happened that I asked about, it'll send me an email. I could have asked it, if it goes over this, send me an email. If it goes over this next threshold, send me and Mark an email, right? So these things that you would normally delegate to someone on your team, and they then have another task on their plate of like, okay, I need to go check in on this thing and keep an eye on it. Or maybe as a project manager, you're juggling a lot of projects and chasing a lot of things down. You can now start to offload some of that mental burden onto Wyatt. One of the mental burdens that I've offloaded to Wyatt is to have a dad joke sent to me every morning. Every morning at 8 o'clock, I get an email with a silly dad joke, which is great. We actually got a really good one this morning, which I'm going to share in a moment. Chats are awesome because they can be scheduled, again, just on a, every day or every week or every first day of the week or what have you. But they can also, because we integrate, we integrate with a ton of systems, namely though Outlook and Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Drive, OneDrive on the Microsoft side. These chores can be triggered via events in those other systems, non-Unanet systems, right? So we can run on a schedule and check for certain things in Unanet, but we can also, monitor an inbox for certain emails. So one example that is totally possible is you could have it monitor your accounts payable inbox for emails from vendors or invoices from vendors. And anytime it gets an invoice, tell it, if it's over this much, just queue it up for me and let me know that I need to come approve it. If it's under a certain threshold, just go ahead and create the purchase journal. And Wyatt can do that. Every time an email comes in, it'll kick off that chore. It'll take it down. It'll read it, understand it. It can put it straight in the purchase journal, or it can schedule a task for you where when you log in, you have a little alert notification and Wyatt says like, hey, I have 3 new invoices. I need you to look at them and tell me what you want me to do. So again, automating our way through like a teammate that is now doing work for you and with you, like alongside you. The last thing where I want to end up is actually back on the home screen. This is one of my favorite features in Wyatt. It is like, I think one of the most useful to me, or I enjoy it the most. We let users set like a simple prompt for a daily briefing. Here, I have Wyatt integrated into my Gmail and my Google Calendar. And I ask it every morning before I get in, check my emails for yesterday and today, and look for anything that I got from Unanet. Also, anything that seems important to me, put it in a table and analyze it and just tell me what my action items are. Also look at my calendar because I'm terrible at keeping up with my calendar. Also look at my AR and then also tell me a funny joke. This runs at 7 o'clock every morning. When I come in, I can collapse it, which is why we didn't see it earlier. But every morning when I come in, I get a fresh thing and it runs with knowledge of yesterday's run. And so you can ask it to do things like keep a look at your cash balance, right? And it can point out trends and say, this is down 5% from yesterday and 12% from 3 days ago when I checked it. You might want to keep an eye on it. So here you can see it ran through said I have a lot of meetings. Here's today's meeting, actually. You've got a lot of meetings coming up. Here's some of the emails you've got. Here's your AR aged. And then today's joke I actually loved. I tried to organize a hide and seek tournament, but good players are hard to find. But we can see this will run again tomorrow morning at 7. If I feel like it missed something, I can kick it off and say like, hey, do that again. Yeah, it's again, this is like right now, every time we add a feature, it's like my new favorite feature, but this is currently my favorite feature because I don't even have to ask Wyatt. When I come in the morning, I have like everything that matters to me on my home screen.
Hey, Brock, do you have user-defined fields in this system?
Yes, yeah. I think I do.
Do those real quick.
Yeah. So, that's identities. So with user-defined fields, obviously you build those in Unanet. This system doesn't have very many in it, but you come into this is just like a one-time task, or if you add more fields in the future, you'll have to do it again for those fields. But it's an opt-in system, right? So you choose which of your user-defined fields you want Wyatt to know about, and you just enable that field and give it a little description so it knows like how to make sense of that field, and then it can query it alongside. So one of our beta users in Toronto, I think, Mark, you guys do this as well, yep. Has a user-defined field for like number of stories on a building, and they wanted to look at show us how many buildings we have that are over 10 stories, and then like break them out into tranches of 10, 20, 30, 40 stories. Traditionally, that would be a custom report or a custom dashboard that you would build in Unanet. Now it's just a question you ask Wyatt. And one more actually point about that, anytime you think of a new question, Unanet in any ERP system is going to ship with like potentially hundreds of reports in it. But if you want to know, show me all the employees that don't have a birthday in the system, or show me everybody who was born on a Monday. Traditionally, each one of those things would be a custom engagement or someone on your team that understands SQL, or you would like run multiple reports and pull them out and put them in Excel and slice and dice together. And that's been one of the most powerful things that I've seen, is just like you said earlier, Mark, like quick decision making, or like answers at the speed of thought. Oh, I wonder if this is true. And then you just ask it. And we know, as we've seen people use Unanet, like everybody uses it differently, right? We have the market sector field. So many people don't use the market sector field, and they'll just name the project with an X at the beginning of it. And that means that it's for hospitals. But then it's frustrating because you can't run the report in Unanet by market sector because it doesn't understand that everything that starts with an X is a hospital. But you can come in and tell Wyatt, like, hey, when I say this is actually what I mean. And you can actually save that, which is another cool thing. We have these briefs, and you can teach Wyatt, hey, anytime that we have project numbers that start with this or what have you, or even just like our fiscal year, by the way, is weird and it starts from here to here. So you can bring that knowledge into Wyatt, teach it, and then it'll remember it going forward.
Yeah. One of the things I would add, and this kind of covers several different questions, I'll try and do a broad stroke across it, is this goes back to Lucas, your leading question of like, what does AI bring and what does it change about working with ERP? If you think about like a hammer, a nail, a saw, and some wood, and you say, what can I build with that? It's kind of open-ended, right? Like, and one of the things that AI provides is if we give it the tools to connect to your data, to interpret your data, to maybe reach out into the web, what can you do with those tools? And the answer is a lot, right? So it's kind of a creativity problem, not necessarily a feature problem. So one of the things we have to move out of is thinking about what features does it have, and think about like what motions can it take. So the fact that the Chores is an ongoing agentic loop, it opens up an enormous amount of doors, right? So, and this is again contrived. I don't want to prescribe too many weird things, but like in a brief, I explained how to connect to an API that we used for a different purpose, and I just said, hey, in a chore, use that API to go automate this thing, and it worked, right? Why? Because 1, it worked on a timer, it has a loop. 2, it could reason over the request. 3, it understands how to talk to the web. And 4, it pulled the data back and did the thing I asked without being overly hand wavy about, yeah, we can do all these things. So much of what you can do will be blown away by, because it's a creativity problem, not a feature problem. Mark, I feel like you were going to say something. I don't want to.
Yeah, I was going to touch on, Brock mentioned it, but I think where it's helped us too is on data hygiene. Mm-hmm. Like when I run a roundup, it typically will tell me, hey, you have these projects that the end date has already passed, things like that, which is super helpful, because to get to that point, I would have to, do a query and then kind of sort through the query, and
And you'd have to think about thinking about it.
Right.
That's the other thing that you kind of pick up for free, is that you might ask a question totally unrelated, but because that data comes back, it says, by the way,
Correct.
I see this too. And I know you didn't ask about it, but do you want to do something about it?
We saw that, Lucas, when we were in Chicago at that PSMJ conference. I had asked just one of the very low level questions that we usually lead with is, does anybody have any birthdays this month? And it was like, well, I see 2 people do, but you also have 8 active employees that don't have birthdays at all. What do you want to do about that? It's like, oh, that's good. So we tried to make that into like the fabric of Wyatt, like get data, but while you're there, look around and see if there's missing data or incomplete data.
Yeah. One of the questions asked about like, hey, can I take a thing that I'm doing in a spreadsheet outside of Unanet and compare it to what I've got in Unanet and find gaps and do analysis on that? And to me, that's an exciting question, because that answer is yes all day long. And that's from a Unanet perspective, one of our main pillars from our AI strategy at large is to unify data across your firm. And so you have this obviously structured ERP data, and then all of the other stuff that sits outside of it, whether you mentioned a couple of the platforms earlier, Brock, like Outlook, but obviously spreadsheets is an easy one to speak to. And that's a great way to bring those two things together and really kind of make sense, taking disparate sources and bringing it into one.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, and Matt's made that point before about he made it yesterday on the PSMJ webinar, the difference between a co-pilot and an agentic platform. So typically the way we've framed our thinking around it is co-pilots, there's definitely a need for them. When you log into Bank of America, right, you have your little AI co-pilot where it's ask me about your balance, something that is in app, that is an expert in app. And there is certainly room in the market, I think, for those sorts of tools. There will likely be some coming inside of Unanet, I would imagine, at some point. But we see those in Microsoft. You have Copilot, and it helps you in Excel. The way we think about this is something that sort of sits outside and can reach into Unanet in ways that no other AI platform will ever, because we have built it specifically for Unanet companies to use. But that can also, like you said, Luke, intelligently bring in disparate systems and lay things next to each other and understand I went and searched the web for this and I found this in your Notion, and it looks like that project is here in Unanet. It has been, if we made no more changes to it, I feel like we say this all the time, for the next 3, 6, 8 months, we would continue to find new use cases, because it's just so powerful the way that it can marry data together like that.
Yeah.
And the coolest parts of it we haven't shown yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Today.
That's right. Yeah, stay tuned. So we've got a few minutes left. I want to see if we can answer a few of these questions. One that popped up, Mark, I actually wanted to send to you. Someone asks, let's see, who in the business is seeing the most kind of benefit?
Yeah, I actually just read that one, Lucas.
Yeah.
Good question, Brandon.
Yeah, that's a super good question. I would say, in the beginning, everything was so new, it was me. And I started to democratize the tool, let's call it, to an individual in our firm that kind of manages the PMs, and then a couple people in my team. And I would say quickly, they all jumped in and were able to, see some pretty major benefits. I think it's really hard to paint that one with a broad brush. Yeah. I think it's more about enabling. I would say it's accelerating human behavior, right? And as people are exposed to the tool, I just think that the improvement and the acceleration of use and the ability to look farther out into the future and get ahead of problems rather than kind of solving problems that have already occurred is going to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I would add to that. I mean, obviously the quick wins are going to be, if you're looking at the ERP today and interpreting data and you find yourself struggling or wishing you could have one more report, you're going to see immediate benefit. Yeah. But I think the real power, and again, this is a little bit opaque, but the real power will be when you start realizing like you can be on a job site and quickly just speak to log what you were doing, and that makes its way back into the system. Mm-hmm. You know, so there's going to be a whole spectrum of use cases, and again, there's going to be use cases that we did not anticipate, because you know, you have to think of it like an actual assistant. You know, if every person in your company had an assistant that could do more than just tell you what your AR balance is, it can check your email, it can look at your data in your calendar and compare it to your schedule and do all these sorts of things, then the better you get at delegating. And I've always been particularly bad at delegating. I'm definitely I'll just go heads down and start working. So part of the motion, part of the skill is learning to think about the work you do and what can I delegate? You know, what can I hand over to Wyatt to do? And once you kind of like, oh yeah, I should start with that. I should ask Wyatt first, check my email, rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. If it's greater than 4, send me a text message. And then I'll stop checking my email until I get texted by Wyatt that I got a 4. And that's I've been doing that for about a week, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, one of the fun use cases that I've played with, I am particularly not fond of email. I shared that on LinkedIn recently that I have like over 30,000 unread emails in my personal account, and then someone at Unanet, Sarah, reached out and with a screenshot. She's like, "I'm over 90, I win." But I'm just so bad at keeping up with email. I have Wyatt run over my email every Friday and compile a list of senders and a count of emails that I got from those senders that are unread, as well as a relevancy score. Totally arbitrary, but I just say like how relevant is it, sort them by like most relevant to least relevant, and it consistently gets it right. And I'm able to say, great, everything below a 50, go ahead and archive that, just get rid of it. And so that's an example of like it working alongside me, but not working for me, because I don't want it to like wipe my emails out with I never saw them. But it surfaces it for me every Friday, and it's like, hey, I did this. Where do you want me to go? Like, great, take this action. One of the other ways to answer Brandon's question, which, hi Brandon, is ideally we hope that everyone in a firm can see value from it. One of the other examples that we are working towards is, you know, having Wyatt reach out to everyone in your firm at 4 o'clock if they haven't put their timesheet in. Hey, time to put your timesheet in. And then them being able to just email back and say, oh, this is what I worked on. And then their timesheet's in, right? So we've just totally shortened that like time in to bills out cycle. If you can get time in the day of, we know, Luke, we've talked about this before, the sooner you put your time in, back when I was working professional services, like the more likely I was to have a higher billable percentage. Whereas when I wait like a week or wait till Friday, and it's like, I can't remember, should I be billing Mark 8 hours or 6 hours? I'm going to call it 6 hours, right? But if I do it the same day, like, oh, I spent 12 hours on this thing today, right? So when we can compress that timeline. But the problem is man hours, right? Nobody has enough money or time to like have an assistant chasing down every person at the end of every day, which is why you save that till timesheet approvals. But if Wyatt can chase every person in your firm every day and say, let's do our time, what'd you work on? And they can just reply over email and say, this is what I did. That's pretty sweet.
Or rather, are you still working on?
Yeah. Here's, you know, in that example, in the tests that we've done, typically it's, hey, this is what you did last week, and you've been working on these phases in this job title. Is that what we're still doing? Like, yeah, I did 8 hours today. Cool. And then it's just in. Which feels
I think one of the bigger wins we had was once we brought in all the timesheet comments, was the ability to put together a progress report for the client. Like it's super impactful. Like, okay, put together this progress report, and by the way, this guy's a contracting officer in the federal government, and it knew like how to like, you know, write that for him.
That's actually that's a great point to pause on too, is like you mentioned, Mark, like your client summaries are now personalized for
Correct.
the client with no additional, you know, work from your team. I can just do that. That's incredible. Well, I know we just have 2 minutes left. There's a lot of really good comments in the LinkedIn comment thread. We'll get out there and throw comments and answer on all of those. We've been trying to pick some of them off as we've been going through today. One of the questions that we do always get is, where can I find out more information about this? And so I've got a slide that can answer that. And Mark, I hope you'll appreciate this nice picture of yourself on this slide. But you can just hit the QR code on that, and that'll take you.
Good.
A little shout out there to you. And then the second thing is, I think all four of us are going to be at Champions conference here in a couple months. And so if you, if you're a Unanet customer already, hope to see you out there, and, track one of us down. And we'd love to talk more about all of this exciting stuff with you out at Champions. So I think with that, we're going to call it a session, and I'll give you guys the last word. We can round the horn. Mark, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Matt?
Fast is fine, but accuracy is everything. How about that?
There you go.
Brock?
I'll piggyback on that and say that's an actual Wyatt Earp quote, and he wasn't talking about ERP when he made it.
We don't think.
I was going to say, was he? And maybe that's the question we'll end on.
There you go.
All right, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone,
Thank you.
for attending.
Thanks.